Hi there and welcome to episode 184 of the ADHD Adults Podcast. As usual, I'm James Brown. That doesn't change. The man who's so old this joke didn't write itself very well. And I'm joined by Dr. Alex Connor, the man who stays young with a mix of exercise and jeopardy. And that's other people's jeopardy, of course. We're sadly without Mrs AuDHD today, who is apparently just an elastic sack that's not as elastic as it used to be. That's a direct quote from her. So her current state of tiredness means she can't be with us. So just Alex, hi.
Hey, Jing of the population means that our demographic is increasing, which is good for shifting book units, James. Aging population and aging.
It's not taken long to get back into the swing of annoying hellos this season, has it? I felt maybe towards the end of last season I was less annoyed, but it's lovely to see that annoyance, which has lasted, what is it now, 18 years, something like that, it's still there. Yeah. So thank you for that reminder. Anyway, how are you? He says disinterestedly.
I'm excellent, thank you. Yeah, good. The book launch was last Thursday or Friday or something, and yeah, we are aware that ADHD Unpacked and Bloomsbury have never had minus sales before, so we're very much pioneers in the book selling industry. And James got the dates wrong for posting about a 25% off deal with Waterstones, which was good. We've absolutely first class.
I shouldn't have told you that because it could have been a brilliant version of the game. But yeah, I thought it was 22nd of March, which is after it's released.
And I also did get the dates wrong.
Amazing.
One of whom sent us a letter.
We'll go with it.
Yeah, it's. I better check. Actually, I haven't looked, James. Who wrote it? I'll just check.
Jesus.
It's from a Robert from Kidderminster. It says here.
Oh.
The letter says, I know. I listened to your last episode on music, and even though I play the harp down here, James has never been very good at strings, mainly because he always thinks it's cheese and eats it. This is a cheese string joke, because I didn't really have a lot of time to write a letter. James, he goes on to say that Dancing in the Street is the only good Derek Bowie song.
You cunt. Oh my God, you don't. That, of all the things you've ever said, has annoyed me the most, and you fucking know it as well.
Writing from your dead dad. Your favorite. There's no shame. No. Anywho, we've had a real letter. Can I? Not that isn't. Can I read it out?
Nope.
Thank you. It's from Ben. It says, "Good day from Australia." If you read this on the show, Alex has all of Australia's permission. He definitely doesn't to do the accent. We think it's hilarious. They definitely don't. I get letters. I've been listening to your thanks, Ben. I've been listening to your podcast for a year now, ever since I blew up my life again. And it was finally suggested to me that I probably had ADHD. I was diagnosed 6 months ago, age 36, and my life has changed dramatically for the better since starting on Vivance. That's lisdexamphetamine, folks. I've also just been diagnosed with ASD, so just starting to explore what that means for me. I wanted to let you know that even though I'd survived 36 years without you, the 6-month pre-diagnosis was the darkest time in my life, and I have no idea how I could have made it through without the three of you. Hearing all of your very real, raw, and relatable experiences, along with facts about my condition, has made me feel seen like the superpower crowd never could. I understand myself now, and as that understanding continues to grow, I've finally started to forgive myself, emotional acceptance, blah, 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 and make meaningful and insightful changes to create a healthier, more genuine, and fulfilling existence. I see myself in each of you. Ding. It says ding. Vampirism and all, and your light-hearted yet in-depth approach to very real issues ADHD face is something I've yet to find anywhere else outside of therapy. And after binging the first 162 episodes, Mondays have become my favourite day of the week as I wait with bated breath for the next episode. Thank you for being yourselves, and thank you for being my guides towards my own unique brand of peaceful wildness. Love this term, by the way. James, I hope you're listening to this. That's my bit. It encapsulates so much meaning in just 2 words. James?
Everything till that last paragraph was wonderful and affirming, and obviously with anything we do to help people is lovely. But I'm so sorry, Ben. You've lost me with that last paragraph. Unfortunately,
I love that when I came up with it only to annoy you, but it does make a bit of sense. I love that.
Yeah, and people seem to respond to it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
As usual, this 55-year-old who's practicing their bad boy limp while wearing a pretty green parka now Oasis reuniting
Oh
of a
yeah.
podcast is a tragedy in 3 parts. We choose a theme. Last time around was about ADHD and music, probably. And today we're focusing on how ADHD impacts aging and older adults. Thanks to Santa Hardcore and anyone else who suggested the topic who I forgot to
Santa
look up.
Hardcore.
Apparently, yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, I forgot to look the rest up. Getting older, anyway. The 3 parts include the can't use that joke twice, so I'll just
No,
say
you said no.
middle-aged man wearing Crocs and socks of evidence. Alex the psycho
I wear Crocs and socks every day.
education monkey talking about the
Hello.
theme, our personal reflections on ADHD and getting older and aging, and then we'll clumsily answer questions that you've sent in, which is much easier to explain without having Mrs AuDHD here.
Oh, yeah.
So, Alex, I have immensely enjoyed watching you age. Tell us about ADHD and aging.
Okie dokie. We should start by saying it is a difficult subject for James as he doesn't age because he's a Dracula. That's what he is. There's going to be quite a few of them in here, so brace yourself. Ding. Aging, weirdly, is poorly understood as a concept, not just by us. That's not because we're shit scientists. They're two are unrelated. It's obviously like a natural lifelong process for almost everyone, James. And we age at different rates because of genetics and environment and luck. What's weird is aging isn't biologically inevitable in creatures. Some species, like James, are so long-lived that in human terms, they don't in fact age, may even be hypothetically immortal outside of disease and being it. One of them is brilliantly the quahog clam, Arctica elandica. That's Greek, James. It's a language that people speak, and it means Iceland near the north. That's the north of. That's all upwards, James.
Okay.
It lives well over 500 years, and the best thing about it is that's what the town in Family Guy is named after. We know that it lives that long because biogerontologists, like James, but good, they found one, killed it, and counted the rings in its shell.
That's how we roll. That's how we roll.
It's incredible. Killing clams and taking nams. Names. I don't know. Actually, wasn't that the title of your PhD thesis, James? Killing clams and taking names.
Pretty much.
I feel that that's unfair. Your title was title of thesis goes here. That's what it was because you didn't write one. I'll do that later.
Yeah, written in crayon as well, obviously.
Yeah. With your left hand. Anyway, there are lots of theories about how and why we age. Most likely is that after our reproductive biological years end, we start to see senescent or old and dying cells accumulate in our bodies, and our immune system that would normally get rid of them, the aging immune system, can't. That's probably the reason for the general deterioration, which is what I should call my autobiography, seen in aging, that James doesn't see every morning when he passes the mirror in his bathroom. Because, can't see in the mirror. Dracula. In general, people are living longer. 50 years ago, life expectancy was around 68 years for men and 74 years for women. Even with infant mortality, it was still lower. And it's gone up to 79 years for men in the UK and around 83 for women. We are not, though, spending those years in good health, all of us, meaning there are lots of age-related diseases and conditions that may all stem from actual aging process itself.
Do you intend for any of this to be about ADHD? Because I know most of this stuff already, but
Been
it
a
is an
while, and
ADHD
it's since you could
podcast.
say that, Bob. Can you just give me a bloody chance? Well, as we have repeatedly said, ADHD is a lifelong disorder, which means it probably doesn't ever really go away and persists into old age in at least half of us, probably all of us, I reckon. For people who are diagnosed earlier in life, there is research that biological differences in brain regions that we have related to attention and executive control and mood processing do persist as we enter old age. So it would appear, James, that not everyone can exercise their ADHD away, despite what far more supported celebrity podcasts. So
Yeah.
there is also some evidence that the biological process of aging might be a bit different in ADHD. And one measure of aging, admittedly poor, not good, is telomere length. They're the telomeres are the little caps on the ends of our chromosomes, stretch the DNA, and they get shorter every time a cell divides. We can replenish them a bit, but that then stops. And then they get so short, they stop dividing and bad things happen inside the cell. So shorter telomeres may be observed in, guess what? ADHD, maybe therefore accelerated aging processes, or at least some of the signs of aging. However, we are all born with different telomere length, and it isn't reliable as a marker of aging. It's kind of getting a bit old-fashioned now.
Yeah, I mean, most of my publications on aging were using telomere length because it's the easiest thing to measure, but it is a pretty shit measure of biological aging.
But that's science, isn't it? If we knew what we knew now, we wouldn't have done it. That's why we know what we know, is because we had to do experiments.
Or if I was a better scientist, I would have done, epigenetic profiling or something, but I couldn't.
Yeah, just anything. Anything better.
Anything better.
There's also the fact that outside of biological aging, people who might be classified as older adults, however you want to classify that, if they've got ADHD, they're probably statistically undiagnosed, because as we covered in the history of ADHD episode, probably on Spotify, unless you're James, who actually bought a first edition of Fidgety Philip in 1859 and then probably lost it in a castle, the likelihood of getting a diagnosis pre this century would range from, and I've checked the stats on this, from slim to fuck all, James. That's the technical. So diagnostically speaking, aging brings challenges. Imagine for a moment being a doctor, James, or a professor of any real measure or value, and you see an older age patient who presents with, are you ready? Forgetfulness, frequently misplacing stuff, forgetting appointments, difficulty completing tasks. Any similarity on this? The patient interrupts you frequently and misinterprets your instructions during cognitive tests. So far, so ADHD. But obviously, and it's a big but, James, this is also how dementia can present. So even from that first chance to assess, things are more complicated. And we haven't even got on to deafness and how deafness can present in a similar way. So not paying attention to things, spoken word and so on. Then we have, and we hear about this all the time, so many people aged over 65 who tell us they've been told you can't get a diagnosis if you're over 65. You can't have medication at your age. What is the point? Why do you want one? Well, put your trousers on and get out of my consultation room, Alex. We've heard this more times than I've had hot dinners.
The last one, particularly.
A lot.
What about as we get older? Because we're living longer and not spending that time in good health. As we get older, what about kind of health and disease in older ADHD adults? Better or worse? Go.
Better. Oh, it's like an optician's where I was also told to put my trousers on. Better or worse? And now, there's a third option, James, science. It's called or the same, otherwise known as mediocre question. Bring Sam back. In general, it is felt that alongside ADHD, the symptoms are quite stable over the lifespan, over our lifespan, and the balance of inattention, hyperactive, impulsive symptoms in younger people, the balance of them is probably the same in older people with ADHD. But we are all different, and many people anecdotally report they feel like symptoms get worse with age. And that isn't just women, and it isn't just the perimenopause, even though that is massively problematic, and it's even more of an effect, but it seems to be across the board. Older adults with ADHD report significantly reduced quality of life when you compare it with the gen pop with everybody else. Most of these studies are small, we have to say that, and very few researchers are, as James would say, give a shit about ADHD, let alone ADHD in older people. We would say that quality of life is a perception of how good someone's life is, and that encompasses so many aspects of well-being. It is self-reported. unless you've got the good kind of ADHD, you might have some negative perspectives on your ADHD, and you might struggle with self-perception because of metacognition.
Absolutely. What about the disease part of health and disease that I asked you to talk about your penis?
It's an excellent question. If you, I don't know why, but me saying excellent question feels more insulting because
It
you
does,
know I'm
it
not
is.
thinking it.
Yeah, exactly.
If you look at some common diseases in older people, we start to see something pretty interesting, which can be difficult to talk about. Not trying to cause mass panic here. It's small statistical differences, but let's do it anyway. So prepare yourself to panic. Research in this area is really hard to do well. Ding. So if you follow a bunch of people until they are old, it costs a lot of money and it's hard to do, and you got to keep in touch. What we have to do is rely on other poorer designed studies. James wrote that bit. Other poorer designed.
Is more poorly designed?
It is, yeah.
Oh, I
Just
learned something.
incredible. What these studies tell us is, are you ready for a boring list klaxon? We need a klaxon button.
I'll get one.
There's a lot of words in this. Right. Okay. A. There's a link between ADHD symptoms and cardiovascular disease in older adults. So high blood pressure, hypertension, more cardiovascular events like stroke. 2, more type 2 diabetes. That's the one where until it gets bad, you don't take insulin for. This is probably partly because of obesity increases, physical inactivity, stress-related insulin resistance. See? I've forgotten what I'm doing. Chronic inflammation, systemic-wide inflammation. That's not swelling. It's inflammation is our response to injury and insult and illness and fatness. Key contributor to loads of age-related diseases, including, again, heart disease and diabetes, so probably linked. And finally, fear. Not fear as a disease, FUMF, fear FUMF. Increased risk of mental health issues, such as depression or anxiety. True as we age, but true in younger people as well.
I really thought you'd gone off script then. I thought, fear, fucking hell, where's he plucked that from?
I sometimes say that the amygdala is the FUMF of our brain because it sits between fear and sex. It's a German joke.
I'm not obviously going to give you benefit for that joke, but it's good. It's clever. That's all I'm going to say.
Now, the stuff we get asked a lot about, and which we've answered questions on before, is the risk of future health issues related to getting older. Again, I'm going to preface this by saying, preface. I like preface. Yeah. I also like diplodocus. Suit yourselves. It's best to preface this by saying, just because you are in a group that has an increased risk of something happening in the future, it doesn't mean it will happen. That's not how risk works. It's percentages. We know from repeated studies that adults with ADHD do have an increased risk statistically of some, and it's small, neurological issues in later life, like Parkinson's and dementia. However, even though the studies are generally big studies and retrospective, so they look back to see if someone was diagnosed with both, it doesn't mean they're perfect studies. And so many other factors are impossible to control for, what we call confounding variables, because it scares a lot of people. What this means is it doesn't mean ADHD definitely causes an increased risk of Parkinson's. And it certainly doesn't mean, even if ADHD did cause that not everyone with ADHD has an increased risk of getting age-related conditions. There are so many other factors at play.
Yeah, I mean, that is a big one, Ding, that lots of people say worriedly when you hear that statistic, you think, oh, what, I'm 3 times more likely to get it. And that sounds very scary. That sounds like, massively increased relative risk.
Why isn't it? What could it be that isn't ADHD causing Parkinson's?
Well, a lot of these studies don't actually, like you say, those confounding variables. If you look at dementia, for example, we know that an increased waist-hip ratio at midlife leads to an increased risk of dementia. And we know in ADHD, we are more likely to be overweight or obese and have binge eating issues. So therefore, if you have accumulated body fat around midlife, that will contribute towards your risk. The lifestyle factors like smoking and other things contribute towards a risk, and we're more likely to do those things.
Booze, drugs.
Yeah, exactly.
What about,
All of the above.
you know how we're underemployed, concomitant with our intellectual ability, people with
Mm,
ADHD? That means we're gonna earn less money on average, right? And
yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's proven, which is another factor, right?
mm,
Socioeconomic factors. It's so
yeah.
if I know you can't say, but if you had to guess, scientifically guess, if you took out all the socioeconomic factors like, obesity and money and health access, do you think there would be any difference in Parkinson's
Yeah,
dementia?
probably less so for dementia. The Parkinson thing is interesting because of the dopamine angle to it. So Parkinson's, which is a neurodegenerative, if you like, movement disorder that involves tremor and then gradual loss of motor skills, and dopamine and the striatum and the motor cortex, which are all involved, are central to that. And treatments for Parkinson's in the early stages often involve dopamine modifying things. So there's something there that isn't well understood. But yeah, you
Yeah.
take all those factors out. There was you probably saw in the press recently the big study showing that we live 11 years less on average if you've got ADHD, and that's a similar thing. It's not necessarily having ADHD that causes that. It's all of the stuff that comes with it, like smoking more, drinking more, probably exercising less, having a worse diet, etc. And the people who, for example, are involved in accidents and may end their own life, who are added to those statistics. But we're getting off track and having a nice
We are,
chat,
yeah,
which
sorry.
I don't like
I
that
just
with
think
you.
that it'd be almost the same. That's my absolute guess.
Final question:
Oh,
what about
yeah.
kind of outside of health?
Oh,
Kind
I'm
of
so glad
in
you asked. I'm not James. I'm not glad you asked. I wish you hadn't. Yeah, there is evidence that as we age, there is a tangible, accumulative impact of
Mm,
having ADHD on those things we've just discussed: finances, reflecting on missed career opportunities, the reduced income that comes with that, retirement funds, because of
mm.
impulsive spending, but also just earning less in general, despite being as clever. And people who were aging reported that their ADHD symptoms alienated their friends, their family, and their co-workers. So
That last one, yeah,
cheery?
that last one's really important because we know that social isolation in older adults is more damaging than smoking.
Yeah.
So if you end up as an older adult who has become socially isolated, it can have a massive impact. And obviously that's really what I hope for your future, Al. On that note, we will take a break and we'll be back in part 2 to give some personal reflections and maybe tips. Ding. See you in a bit.
You are my social network.
Alex, hi.
Aight. What's up? Hello, Governor. Jesus already.
Fuck's sake.
Welcome back to episode 184 of the ADHD Adults podcast, but it's just James and me because Sam is, according to James, a bit tired. This episode is on ADHD and aging. In part 2, as always, we're giving our personal reflections on ADHD and aging, which I don't know about because I'm very, very young, and James doesn't because he's never aged. You see, because he's a Dracula. Come on then, James. You're an ex-biogerontologist, Diplodocus. Tell us about it.
So I think I may have mentioned this before. When I was a scientist, I jumped from subject to subject because obviously ADHD. And when I realized I'd reached the limit of my knowledge of one or got bored, I'd move on to something else. I started off
After a week.
working in diabetes and obesity and then moved into aging, and they're kind of related. So I was, for a while, a biogerontologist and a trustee for the British Society for Research on Aging, the world's oldest aging research society. And it's fascinating when you look at aging, and you're right when you talked about socioeconomic status and its impact. If you look at life expectancy, for example, in Glasgow, and if you follow the train line out from central Glasgow to the leafy suburbs, then life expectancy increases by 30 years for men, from 54 years to 84 years. And that gives you an impact of how, the environment and demographics like socioeconomic status can impact aging. And we know that ADHD impacts multiple systems involved with aging. When we talked about, I think we talked about, we did an episode on immunity, didn't we? But we know that the immune system can work differently in ADHD. So the process of aging itself, I think, might be slightly different, but probably because of those lifestyle things that we do. The fact that I smoke, the fact that I destroyed mountain ranges of cocaine for 30 years. All of the maladaptive health coping strategies I've taken on board throughout my life have almost certainly shortened my lifespan. When you look at kind of the older adults and ADHD side of it, we do hear that older adults are being refused diagnosis or medication. The thing about the under 65 thing, I mean, have you seen? I've looked through the NICE guidelines, and I'm pretty sure I can't see something that says if somebody presents for referral at the age of 65, they do not warrant a referral. It's not in there.
No.
And I think this is just another form of stigma and discrimination that it's probably difficult enough when you're that age to accept this change in identity, and then to go out and look for help, and then to be told, yeah, I'm not going to refer you, either because you're too old, or what's the point at your age? How's it going to help you? It must be really shit to be honest, to get to that point in life, want to learn more about yourself and have a happier retirement, for example, or carry on working, and to not get that support. That risk of aging related kind of disease stuff, it needs so much more work to understand it. I need to talk to you about this, Alex, offline.
Exciting.
There is a really, really good, if you like, project called the UK Biobank in the UK, which has 500,000 people involved. And what they do is every year or 5 years, they take a blood sample, fill in questionnaires, and record health issues. And I've used this to publish in the past on PCOS, comparing people in that biobank, women with reproductive age with PCOS to women without. And there will be a record of ADHD in there. So we are going to try and look at some research to see from that UK biobank if there are differences. So there are some studies which are actually tracking people over the long term, but obviously, yeah, most of it is really badly designed stuff. And when most people are undiagnosed, or you're only looking in diagnosed populations, it's biased straight away. So we need more work to understand it better. Is it ADHD itself, or is it the lifestyle we lead? Probably the latter. The symptoms thing I find is interesting, because I genuinely do feel like mine have got worse as I've got older, but I've only known, when was it you got diagnosed? About 2016, 17, something like that?
15, I think. I can't actually remember.
15.
It was
So
before 16. I think
yeah,
it was 10 more than just over 10 years
yeah.
ago, so 15.
So when you phoned me up and told me I was more ADHD than you, that was the first I've really heard of it in adults, and
Which is a
it was only
really fine thing to do to someone.
It
Perfectly
is,
acceptable.
yeah, completely. In fact, they should probably do that in assessments, to say you're way more ADHD than the last person I assessed. So I've only really started to notice my symptoms since just before diagnosis, and lots of people report that symptoms get worse, things get more challenging. It's often a mixture of unmasking and knowing what ADHD is. And equally, the past 2 years for me have been incredibly fucking stressful, and stress impacts our symptoms. So it's difficult to know from my perspective whether, as I get older, I turn 50 this year, as do you, Alex, before me, because you're older.
Why would you say that? Why would you make
Why?
up stories like that?
Make up stories.
I do not like it.
No,
Thank you.
it doesn't matter. It is just a number. I still feel kind of mentally 12 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's difficult to know, because I've always been a bit of a public mess, and it's hard to know whether it's getting worse as I age. But it is something I will look for as I age further. I'm going to give a tip, Alex, ding,
Ooh,
which I think we've done. I gave one last time, and you two fuckers didn't.
yeah.
It's
Ding.
important if you are yeah, we'll take it. If you're an older adult, and we use that phrase because the term elderly isn't used anymore, because it
And
can
it
be
doesn't
used
mean anything, does
pejoratively.
it? What do
No,
you mean by it, James? Approximately, sort of retirement age,
older adults normally means 65 and above in
right?
kind of scientific research terms. But if you are an older adult and you suspect you have ADHD, and like the rest of us, try and go through that journey of getting a referral, and you hit a barrier, if you get rejected for a referral, if you get told you can't have meds, then, and it's so kind of ableist, but push back, ask why. ask for where it says in the NICE guidelines that at your age you do not warrant a referral and cannot take medication, because it's not true. And I hate to think that there are going to be people out there who might get to that point. And I've met some of the little talks I do. I do little talks.
His little talks.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I've
I've
done one with you. It was awful.
I've met, it was for everybody involved. I met somebody at one that was 77 years old and had got diagnosed the year before, and it was, for somebody that's anhedonic, about as joyful as I get to see somebody that age who was saying they really understood themselves now, and it was wonderful. But that happened the day after I'd received an email from someone saying I'm 67 and my GP won't refer me because you can't refer people over 65. So if you get pushback, ask why, ask for evidence. So where does it say I can't be? Because it doesn't say it anywhere that I'm aware of anyway.
No, and if you take like random NHS regions, the Tower Hamlets ADHD service says this is a specialist service for adults. We offer 18 to 65-year-olds assessment and treatment for ADHD. Explicitly disrupts. It doesn't say what to do if you're over 65. Doesn't say that you can get it. I don't know if they just have a different service. I suspect not, but I don't know why they've chosen that, and they certainly don't explain it.
No.
And I find that really frustrating. Really frustrating.
Yeah, and it must be frustrating for the people in that area and anybody else that hears that. What about you, Alex? What are your reflections, and what's your tip look like, Ding? Small.
I've never been bothered about aging until recently with this big birthday looming up, and it's sort of it's bothering me slightly. Not massively. It just, what I have noticed is that when I don't take my meds, my ADHD is just as bad as it's always been. It's dead stable. And that's really annoying. This idea that it goes away. The stats say it's in half of adults, don't they? That it remains. But I've never met anyone that doesn't have ADHD now that did as a kid. I've just never met anyone. And I find that really notable. I guess I only meet people who identify as ADHD in the name of science. But mine have always been the same. They're always the same things. They're always about executive function, emotional dysregulation. My strengths are still my strengths. My weaknesses are still shite. What's really frustrating is several years of full sobriety, still exactly the fucking same. Yeah, I thought that it would be something, except anxiety. I hate to be that guy, but the thing you learn about alcohol is that it is a cure for very short-term anxiety, and it is a cause of chronic anxiety at the same time. My anxiety is so low. I'm using anxiety in the medical term, so that's stress without a stressor. If you say, I'm anxious about a real thing, then that's stress more than anxiety, because that's real. It's not like but we use it colloquially. But so when I'm in anxiety, feeling that anxious and unhappy and those sorts of feelings, regardless of not having a reason for it or an obvious reason for it, I don't get that anywhere near as much since sobriety. And I used to get it a lot more. So the meds help with it, with me, not with everyone, and sobriety. So apart from that, though, fucking the same, James. And the other thing says that we age just like everyone else. So the things that all aging, and this is James's field, so I'm embarrassed to even suggest I know what they are. So like, I think we give less of a shit globally as we age, but we're more fearful. I think that's right. Older adults feel more fear about the world and about things. I don't know if it's because of a like physical loss or what, but we age like anyone else. And that means we have less spoons, less availability to deal with the ADHD stuff. If you've got a dial that goes up to 10, and when you go past, or 11, even better, once you go past that, you feel stress, right? It doesn't matter what causes it. Poverty, misogyny, bigotry, food, whatever causes you stress, they're all just numbers up to 11. Once you go past it, you feel stress. And aging is unfortunately one of them. So if ADHD is causing you up to a 7, it wouldn't take much aging problems to get you past the 11. So whatever stresses you can deal with, do, whether it's aging, whether it's ADHD. And because I think that that's my main observation with me, is I have to look at which stresses are controllable and which aren't by me. and only deal with the ones that are, because it's depressing as hell otherwise. But it's a right
One
nightmare. Sorry, James.
one thing we haven't talked about that I think probably just a really quick discussion, and that's retirement. And what the fuck do you do with yourself? Because I have terror for a weekend, Alex. Let's face it, for an evening. So
Yeah.
if I am going to live, it'll be 67 by the time we're allowed to retire. If I am going to
You'll
live
never.
past 70, which
you're not.
isn't not going to happen, obviously.
No.
But even if it was 3 years of retirement,
Yeah.
I'm
what
not.
do you do?
I have no fear of mortality, but I have fear of 3 years at least where I'm not going to have anything to do with
Oh
myself.
my god, yeah. I've already got it. I've already written it down. Like I've reminded myself what sports I would do and what learning I would do every hour of every day, because the domestic anxiety would be so wild. I'd be on heroin before the month was out. That thing
Yeah.
that you and I say all the time, which is it's okay for hobbies to be tasks as well for us.
Yeah.
I think it's true of
Yeah.
everyone, but for ADHD specifically, why you play the guitar, are you still?
I am, yeah.
Oh, it's awesome. An hour, I will play the piano in my case for half an hour now. I will do that. So I will play sport. I will make sure that everything's a task. Even watching a film I want to watch is a task for ADHD to be checked off. And I think that's what I'll do. To be honest, that's
Yeah.
what my work's like as well, isn't yours? You've got those things and you do them.
Yeah, I know, I do, and I suppose it's just that when those things get taken off me, but knowing me, I'll end up just finding things to do in the 3 short years before I die post-retirement. Anyway, time for a game, Al.
No, we haven't. I've checked.
This is going to be such a hilarious cell phone that I had to fight the urge to not just tell you this. So I've started going to the gym, Alex, as part of my slower than wanted but staggered 2025 plans, and I've been twice, which is more than I've been in the last year. And while I was at the gym the other day, I saw an incredibly tall man, and
did you tell him?
Well, this is the
James,
whole point.
just before you, I forgot to say that we know women face the stigma of aging more than us. I meant to, but Sam was going to talk about that, and they didn't, and I feel bad that we didn't mention that. But sorry, that's the only thing. Should have said it later. Incredibly tall man.
Yeah, so an
How
incredibly
tall?
tall man. Well, I would suggest probably over 7 feet tall, and that is tall. And you said, did you speak to him? And that's the subject of the question. So I didn't speak to him, and I want you to know that to work out the reason why. So one, did I forget to go over and speak to him? So I was actually on a treadmill at the time and saw this guy and just thought, he's magnificent. I've got to go over and say, you are the tallest person I've seen. So did I forget?
Never know, would he? He would never know otherwise.
Not. No,
People
exactly.
don't.
So did I forget to go over and tell him?
Yeah.
Did I go over, realize that I actually knew this person, and then walked away out of embarrassment? So did I actually know them and walk away out of embarrassment? And I do know some very, very ridiculously tall people. And the third option is I went over and he wasn't tall.
Oh, it's got to be that one. So I'm just going to go through it quick. You won't forget because your mind's a steel trap. You don't forget anything. But that's a joke on you because your mind's shite. I don't think you knew him because you don't have any friends.
Yeah, it's fair
because
enough.
of your personality. And yours all died of old age 250 years ago because you were Dracula. So I only because I really desperately want it to be true. He wasn't tall. He was stood on a box. Please, please, please be that one. Was it that one? Oh, what was happening? What?
He wasn't stood on a box. The pull-up bars have footrests that are about a foot and a half high, and I couldn't see them on the treadmill, so I thought, he's magnificent. Got off the treadmill, walked over without really looking, stood next to him. He looked down. I looked down at the footrest he was on, looked up at him, and then just walked away. He wasn't tall, and I made a complete penis out of myself because I didn't look to check. Hang on, he's quite tall. Maybe he stood on something. I just hopped over there.
And he would have had like a normal torso. Therefore, you assumed he just had an extra 35 centimeters of leg, ding.
Yes.
In a similar embarrassing thing, a friend of mine who lives in Berlin was walking past a photograph of an actual diplomatic delegation from a different country and heard, "Get in the photo," so got in, but they weren't shouting at her.
Oh, amazing.
Like last week. Best, most, oh God, like so, if you're not paying attention to social rules, like we don't. Oh
Yeah.
God.
Painful. I
Yeah.
don't know what the score is for this series, but that's
I'm
definitely one
winning.
to you. I think you might be winning or it's 1-1, but somebody will tell us anyway.
Yeah.
On that depressing note, we'll take a very
Brilliant
short
note.
break, which for you will be almost no time at all, and probably for us either. I'm not sure. And we'll be back in part 3 to answer questions that you have sent in, what we are going to try and answer. See you in a bit.
Horse shit. Welcome back to episode 184 of the ADHD Adults Pot Trois. We're taking your questions. It's just James and me, I'm afraid, because Sam's sleepy. Let's dive straight in, James. Have you got a question for us?
Have I got a question, Alex? I'm trying to
yeah, valid
I'm
point, valid question, because Sam's not here.
trying to do Sam ding.
Yeah.
No, but I have got a question from Rowan, and Rowan has asked, I've experienced something I call time vertigo more and more as I get older. Rowan's 43. It's not exactly a feeling of nostalgia, but more shock at the passage of time. For example, my mind went back to the time I was getting ready to be the dad of a little baby, and then I had the realization that said baby is actually 9 years old now, accompanied by the terrible feeling that I'd somehow missed the last 9 years, and real shock and terror at how the time has passed. I haven't missed it, and I know a lot of people have these feelings, but I wondered if this kind of thing might be exacerbated by the time blindness and memory problems associated with ADHD. Has anyone ever talked about this or done any research? Shall I have a quick fiddle before you do, Al?
Go on, you have a diddle at that.
I said that. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting because I can definitely recognize this, not having a 9-year-old child because I'm childless. But definitely that feeling that, like a decade has passed and I can't really remember any of it, and not because of like poor memory due to it being spent not being sober. There is some evidence in ADHD that some of us have poorer autobiographical memory. So that is the memory of events that happened to us in terms of the context, in terms of, who was there, in terms of the accuracy of that memory. And obviously we do have time blindness, most of us as well, but that's normally about time estimation and time reproduction and kind of seeing time as a linear future thing. So the poorer autobiographical memory, I think, probably contributes towards that kind of difficulty to recollect all of those things that happen. What do you think?
Yeah, loads of people with ADHD say to me, I don't remember school. I don't remember, like, loads. It's a really common observation, and there is a link. Worth pointing out that in general, like as a big ticket sentence, we don't have poorer memory outside of the super short term working memory. Like we have the range. So if yours is poor, you're within the range of everyone else. It's not that our long term and short term memory is bad. It's our super short term working memory that's bad. But as James said, the devil's in the detail. There are things. The question is, how does memory work, and what do we remember? It's what we paid attention to and what we felt emotionally linked to. And as ADHD is, it's not worse attention. Remember, it's not choosing what to pay attention to. So one of the reasons we might have poorer memory about our own lives is because we weren't paying attention for the entire time. We got distracted by an interesting tree or similar, and it might have had a bigger emotional effect on us. And it's emotions that lay down long-term potentiation in the synapses of neurons, which is what long-term memories are. And so if you've got an emotional dysregulation, of course you're not going to remember you're going to remember the thing that emotionally affected you. That's what memory is. We tend to remember bad things because they have big effects on us emotionally. But not only those. James has had an epiphany.
No, I genuinely have. So one of the things that we know about memory is that some of our senses are very closely linked to memory. So smell particularly is the strongest sense that can evoke a memory. And I just wonder whether different sensory processing might also be involved in that. if the sensory inputs which we associate with a memory are different, that might be involved, maybe.
So what's probably likely is that it's patterns. So I've been, funnily enough, I was looking the neurology of that up last week because I'm super cool and I was on holiday from work. And if pattern spotting,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
do that, you have to take your long-term memory, which in ADHD is as good as anyone else's. Let's say it's a smell, which, as you say, is the best one we're good at. But if you smell something and say, "What's that?" or you hold something in your mind's eye, like a picture of a leaf, and say, "Have I seen that leaf before?" The memory of the leaf or the smell is fine, but the mind's eye or the mind smell, that working memory, isn't. So we're kind of holding up the image of a leaf in our head and trying to compare it to an old memory isn't working properly. And it's the working memory that means we're not very good at pattern spotting, despite what superpower people on the internet say. Not the memory itself. So the initial sensory processing is probably about normal.
Yeah.
It's the pattern, like the going, "Oh, well, what is this now? And how do I hold that smell in my head now? If I'm smelling bananas, is that bananas?" It might be a problem with that. And so
Interesting.
I love, and there's no repressed memories either. That's a load of old bollocks. Like this idea
Is
of
it?
yeah, we like really bad things that we've repressed. Why
Yeah.
would we? That's what memory is. It's there to remember negative things so we don't kill ourselves by eating a bad berry. And so there's never been psychological evidence for this repressed memory syndrome. And people say, "Oh, well, you've got trauma, you just don't remember it." It's highly unlikely. People don't like to think about it and dwell on it. That's not the same thing. This, like,
True.
it's very, very disturbing. If you go to the Royal Society of Psychiatrists, they explain this, that there's not really any evidence for those. Have I got distracted by this conversation?
A little bit, yeah.
Sorry.
Do you have a question, Alex?
I do, yeah. My question is, can we talk more about repressed memories? But it's not about me, James, weirdly. I don't know why you thought it was. It's a question from one of the people who's written in this case from Suzanne. It says, "I'm wondering if there is any point getting a diagnosis in your late 50s when you got through life so far not being diagnosed. I'm wondering if this has been or could be a podcast subject, ADHD when you're older." James, any thoughts on aging and ADHD?
I mean, yeah, everything we've said. This was a well-selected question, I suppose, or we could have put it in last week to prepare for this week and make it look like we're writing scripts based on what people actually ask for. Is there any point getting a diagnosis in your late 50s? I would say if you want one, yes, or seeking an assessment for a diagnosis, absolutely, because even if you don't take medication, if you're still working, there are protections in the workplace in terms of your identity and how you view yourself and the often negative internal framing, the labels we give ourselves, moving towards emotional acceptance, blah, 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 even when you're in your 50s is important. Now, you don't need a diagnosis. You can kind of identify and still emotionally accept. But some of the support that's there, whether it's medication, whether it's protection in the workplace, in my opinion, makes it worth exploring if you want to. Al?
Yeah, first thing is it's an absolutely personal decision. And loads of people say this to us, don't they? And I'm trying to say this without redefining what somebody else. So somebody's description of their life is a fact. I will not and cannot challenge it. What I will also say is that our metacognition's poor and we have self-worth and self-image problems. So if you say, like mentioning no names, Jules, my brother, for example, has done really, really well, but he thinks he's done really well. He doesn't realize how clever he is. And he could have been, my God, Prime Minister with a bit of support. And it's that conversation that I struggle with people, because I want to say, "Oh my God, you're brilliant. You've had to face this and you've also done really well." Imagine what you could have done without that being a negative, as just only as a positive. And the only way, so I think, yes, if you see that, if you want label or self-label as opening new windows and doors for you, new opportunities, it's a positive thing. If you feel it restricts you, it is not, like any label. I think that got through life isn't the aim. I compare it to somebody who has been short-sighted their entire life till they're in their late 50s and has never had glasses. Is there any point getting them glasses now? I would say yes.
Yeah.
And I sometimes think that even the meds or the help we get, the support, I kind of think they're sort of glasses for your head.
I'm very
Although glasses are
surprised.
also for your head.
I'm very surprised you haven't commented on my glasses because they're,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, bigger and thicker and a bit stupid looking.
Do you know what? I do want to make a Roy Orbison joke, but they're quite cool. I like them. He forgot his glasses once and had to borrow some NHS specs, and that's where that came from. He found it was quite a
Amazing.
useful mask. I think that was
Brilliant.
Roy Orbison. Might have got mixed up with
Certainly
you.
could have been. Yeah, or Morrissey, which is easy to do, obviously, because
So
I'm
yeah, glasses for your
fat
head
and
as
racist.
opposed to normal glasses.
Perfect. I like that analogy, Alex. And that brings us,
What?
it doesn't, but we'll come to the final question.
Have you got a question?
Yeah, I know. I don't have a question, but I am going to read a question.
We're so
This is
annoyed.
obviously or paying tribute to Sam. So this is from I Love Cheese.
Oh,
Can you experience RSD if
come on.
you were the one doing the rejecting? I'm aware there may be some crossover with autistic hyperempathy. I'm thinking
Oh.
of examples where you politely decline to talk to Jehovah's Witnesses or where you have to choose candidates after interviews, even though everyone's perfectly polite with all within scripts for these situations. I get an overwhelming rush of feeling that can still have effect days later. And I'm wondering if this is RSD. Thanks, Alex.
It's a great question. What do you think?
I
You've usually
definitely
got a
get.
more useful.
I definitely get this. So I call it RSD by proxy, if that makes sense. So if I am doing the rejecting, then it has an impact on me, and that's everything from. So everything that's gone on the last 6 months means I've had to stop doing hardship coaching. I did some hardship coaching for about 10% of my clients who genuinely couldn't afford coaching. So I was doing it either for free or a quid pro quo. And then when everything fell to shit and I had to stop doing that, it killed me.
Yeah.
To have to say to people, I'm sorry, I can't do that for you. And not because I would feel rejected, because I was worried they would. The interview thing, you and I mean, fucking hell, you interviewed me, didn't you, back in 2007 or whenever
Yeah,
it
for a
was for
job.
that
Yeah, for Warwick
position,
Uni.
for a job. Yeah, it's easier because it's often by email or it's done by HR in some organizations. But that feeling when you have to say no to somebody, and not kind of people pleasing aspects of it, but you're going to deliver something that could drive their RSD, definitely impacts me, and that impact can last. So I love cheese. I mean, I don't love cheese, but I'm saying to I love cheese. It's the fucking weirdest sentence I've ever said. Yeah, I definitely get this, and I think it's probably related to empathy, justice, sensitivity, and knowing what RSD is, and therefore being able to empathize with the experience that person is probably about to have. What about you, Al?
I think Russell Barkley, who I think is amazing, but one area I disagree with him is he thinks we don't need RSD within ADHD. And he thinks that because he thinks that everything in it is covered by emotional dysregulation and executive dysfunction. And technically, I think he's right, but practically he's not. So technically, yeah, that's true. But practically, it's so important to us, RSD, that I think it deserves its own special place because it's how a lot of us. How many people have when you're talking about RSD, are the ones that it really triggers their realization of what they are?
Yeah, absolutely. The little
Much
talks.
more
That's
than
when you can
emotional
see people's
dysregulation.
eyes kind of,
Exactly.
widen.
So he might be technically correct, but in the same way that a tomato is technically a fruit, it's unhelpful when you're making a fruit salad. And the reason that's important is because RSD isn't usually the actual rejection. It is, I mean, that is bad, but it seems to be not as bad as the perception and the anticipation of rejection. That's what really fucks us up. And so I think that what you're experiencing is emotional dysregulation in response to hurting someone, rather than strictly RSD, which is you feeling rejected or anticipation. And despite that, as a coach, I work with people all the time on respecting other people, that they are resilient enough to deal with a clear no. It's okay. You
Mm.
know, I think this idea that they're going to collapse and crumble and hate you, and it just isn't borne out. And the way I do that is by asking you, how are you with an act? If somebody says clearly and explicitly and non-emotionally, oh, I can't do that for you,
Mm.
because they can't, do you crumble? Do you die? No. You know, you deal with it. You're an adult. You can, and so can they. And it's okay to trust them. And I think that that's how I have had to think. I've had to flip it. Okay, if that was me, all I would want is as soon as you can know, and without being upset with me, tell me no quickly, and that's helped. But no, it's never easy to say no to someone.
I can give an example of this, actually, because I
Go
get
on.
this RSD by proxy a lot with you.
Yeah.
Because yes, and a view behind the curtains here, I worry a lot about if I have upset Alex or if I'm going
And you
to
have.
upset Alex. A lot, all the time, deliberately and maliciously. But
Yeah.
and this is the first time I've mentioned this, and I can't give details. But whilst ADHD Unpacked, which is now available, we think it came out last
The
Thursday or
book.
something. We're not sure.
Yeah.
Yes,
Was
the
it
book.
last week?
Something like that, yeah. So far, I think 3 copies have probably been sold. But I'm going to be working on a book with Sam, and
Boo.
yeah, exactly. But it took me probably 10 days to tell you because
Yeah.
I was worried it would hurt you and cause you RSD,
And what
and
did
that
I say, James?
I can't fucking remember, but it was broadly
Oh, I think that's
positive and
great. Do you want me to
supportive.
help
Yeah,
you with it with no credit? I don't
yeah.
give a shit, and you know that.
Yeah, and
It's
that's what
funny, isn't
often
it?
happens. But that for 10 days, I was okay. I'll tell him, and then no, I can't. You know, because I was so conscious of this in my head reaction that I thought you were going to have. This I was preparing for your RSD, which obviously
Yeah.
never happened.
And what's weird is that you and I are already planning to write the second book,
Yeah, yeah.
and we haven't got a date on it. So there was no. You're not breaking an agreement. You're not.
No, exactly.
Yeah, it's
But
strange, isn't it?
just yeah, so I definitely I definitely get that feeling of, if you like, that
Yeah.
RSD by proxy, that you can have that it is emotional dysregulation, you're right, but technically RSD is like a subset of emotional
It is. Yeah. Maybe
dysregulation.
it's the rejection of someone being upset with you rather than feeling bad about them being rejected. That
Yeah,
they're
it's
cross with
really
you for being rejected. So it's
yeah, it's hard. I mean, and that's possibly an explanation. It
your
is
book will be
because
shit.
yeah, it will almost certainly be shit. I think it's going to be called Getting Shit Done, which I love the title of because Sam does videos on Patreon, silent body doubling, called Getting Shit Done with Mrs AuDHD. So whether they know
We
that or
tried to
not,
call that chapter
anyway,
that, do you remember? And they said no.
we did. I know. Yeah, I think the different publisher, maybe lower standards. I don't know. Anyway. On that note, that was episode 184, I think, of the ADHD Adults podcast, where we talked about ADHD and aging and lots of other stuff. If you're interested now, ADHD Unpacked is available in all good bookshops and pretty soon also in the Works and
Bookstops.
Poundland. Bookstops. Fucking hell.
And
It's
in
been a while
Poland soon.
Oh, yeah, also in Poland, which I'm very confused about.
Yeah.
We've got in and around when this is released, there'll be talks and other events. You can obviously get in touch, send us your questions, send us your letters, suggest topics at the website. There are 3 forms there, so www.theadhdadults.uk, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye all.
Trigger warning, klaxon. Klaxon, 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 big klaxon. No. Trigger warning, klaxon. Klaxon, klaxon.
So I was walking down the street the other day and I fell in a hole, and then a gerbil fell on top of me, and then that gerbil brought all its family, and then a bunch of bees flew. I don't know how she does this.
She's gonna kill
I
you.
don't get it.